Infectious diseases are bacteria and virus. And I need you guys to understand, first of all, that when it comes to bacteria, very, very few, okay, very few, meaning less than 1% of the bacteria in the world makes people sick. Why do we have such a fear of bacteria? All right. That being said, virus, influenza has been here since the beginning of time. Why are we so afraid of influenza? Okay. Jacqueline, you had raised the question about things like MRSA. Well, you had said antibiotic resistance bacteria.
Mhm.
And hence I ran with MRSA, which is methicillin resistant Staphylococcus aureus. And there are concerns. Yes, your virus and your bacteria do have the ability to mutate, to change. And like all things in life, I mean, they're going to do it naturally. This is part of the natural order of life, just like the earth is going to go through its changes, whether we're here or not. It's dynamic and it's living. But we have the ability to slow things down and speed things up. We can have an influence on things. But I tend to think that humans, I think, give ourselves a little more credit than we honestly deserve. It's something you'll have to ponder on your own. So that being said, bacteria, I want you guys to think about, starting with the question is, what is your exposure to bacteria? What experience do you have with bacteria?
I was a TA in a microbiology lab.
Okay, and?
I learned a lot about it. I learned that it doesn't have to be this big issue that people think it is. I think people think that they're super dangerous and scary because they're not like well educated on it. I don't think there's a lot of good material for the public to learn that your body is full of bacteria and you need them to do things in your body to break down certain things. But I do think that between the pharmaceutical industry and the reactive way that our medical system works, and people not finishing their antibiotics and people misusing their antibiotics, has created the issue that people should be kind of like, you should be afraid of these bacteria that we can't treat anymore. Like, MRSA, vancomycin resistant, TB. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't remember if I got TB as one of the resistant ones on here.
TB is terrifying.
Yeah, well, TB was terrifying before.
I know. And it's not profitable for them to make new antibiotics, which is why it's another issue because of the pharmaceutical industry. But that's a soapbox for another day.
Yes, that is. And I agree with you. Yeah, it's interesting. For my resistance. Oh, I have drug resistant TB on here. Okay, got it. Yeah, so, you've got, Jacqueline, you just presented two different things. So now what you've done is you have really taken bacteria and divided it into three categories. Okay.
Okay.
You've got one category that you stated is that the majority of bacteria is, as we have here, is the majority is harmless. And it's a part of the natural order of life, just as a bacteria swallowed a bacteria and voila, we've got some human action going on. And then that is part of the natural order of life, and it will naturally evolve on its own. Okay, because that's what survival of any species is. It has to evolve to kind of keep with the times. And then, as you're pointing out, we have the bacteria, or as part of this is that we have bacteria that is just downright nasty. Okay, and some of that bacteria that's nasty, folks, actually is circumstantial. Do you guys know what I mean by the fact that some bacteria is circumstantial?
You mean opportunistic?
Could be.
That's what I'm going with.
What do you mean by that, Jacqueline?
I mean, if you let's say you're using a feminine care products that are scented and maybe a different pH and like alter the environment of like your vagina and stuff, it allows for yeast and like other bacteria to grow more because you've wiped out normal flora that you need to have there.
You've upset the balance.
Yeah, that's a nice way to put it.
Excellent. You know, we have something actually that's becoming more prevalent in the medical world and unfortunately not getting the attention it needs, which is SIBO, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. And this is bacteria is migrating through some people's digestive tracts. And when it migrates, you know, it's folks, you know, your body from mouth to exit, your your anus is a lumen. It's a straw, okay, that happens to silly straw. It curls and swirls around and everything, but the reality is it's an opening. And we refer to it as the inside of your body, but it's actually not. Do you guys, can you wrap your head around that? So if this is the passageway, the inside of the body is actually what's on the outside of that passage. Isn't that crazy? And so what we have is this transport, and it goes in and out. I mean, just really in and out. That's it. And if a person has a upset, disrupted system, the passage through that in and out is faster. Okay. So think of it as like as when you have teeth, you're able to chew your food to break it down. But this is a gateway where it's got to go through that process to more effectively go down your throat. You have a swallowing mechanism to move it along. It gets to your stomach. You've got your epiglottis. I'm not thinking of your epiglottis. What am I thinking of, you guys?
Esophagus,
Esophagus and
stomach. Oh, you're. Oh God.
short-term memory loss at its best. Okay, moving along. You have the gateway to transfer things from stomach to intestinal tract, and then in intestines, it continues its journey through. And once it gets to your anus, then you have through all of the intestinal tract, you've got the peristalsis, the muscular contractions, and then things exit. And the reality is, if I were to hook you up with a hose, I could potentially just shoot the fluid right through your body. It would take a bit. You would damage the heck out of the person. You'd kill them. But in theory, that could happen. So it is an opening, but that opening has a lot of life in it. It's like a frigging Amazon in there. And some of it's in your mouth and some of it less favorable because we have cavities and things. And then you have hydrochloric acid in the stomach, which is not favorable. And if you have bacteria in there, Houston, we have a problem. This is going to be things like Helicobacter pylori. And H. pylori bacteria actually is the true foundation of ulcers. I mean, you can experience ulcers from things like overconsumption of alcohol, but H. pylori is the aggressive ulcerous bacteria, and it promotes, it sets the foundation over time for stomach cancer. All right. It's just a nasty bacteria. And ice cream man. And then as we move into the intestinal tract, depending on where you are in the intestines, you have different flora, microflora that live at different stages. So think of it as like a condominium building. You have different residents in different locations, and that's absolutely fantastic and perfect because they have a rhythm and they have the place where they belong. But when they translocate and they start moving into areas that are not their normal real estate, we now have bacterial overgrowth. They're taking over other areas. And when they do, there becomes like this internal war in the intestinal tract between those bacteria. They are good bacteria. They're both good bacteria, just like our society. You've got good people, but some people don't know how to behave. And then it gets kind of really going sideways with each other. Then you have, so in the situation like that, that disrupts the rhythm in the intestinal tract, which now interferes with a person's ability to absorb nutrition. Well, if you can't absorb nutrition, you're now disrupting the body's ability to thrive, to strengthen itself, to have the building materials to aid it, which means foods then pass through very quickly because there's no gradual process and relationship with these bacteria. when you think about some of the bacteria, I mean, some of it living in your intestinal tract is the same that's in yogurt. Inside, outside, in your mouth, doesn't on your skin, doesn't matter. Absolutely fabulous. Some of that bacteria is in there, and let's keep it in there. E. coli is a great example. E. coli is down, it's in your colon, and it has a function. It aids in your process of nutrition and your body's ability to produce nutrients, and that's fabulous. But when E. coli, whether it's in a cow's colon or a human colon, when it gets out on the outside and then has the ability to enter the beginning of the lumen, it can cause literally a catastrophic breakdown in the internal function of the human body, and you can have systemic failure of organs. And it was 1991, I think, where we had the Jack in the Box outbreak of E. coli in their hamburger. And we had 4 children die from exposure to E. coli. We had many people experience liver failure because of this. And that changed the food industry. And that is why now today, when you do fast food, what you've got is very well done meat because of this fear, and this upped inspections of foods. And that's great. That's a little bit of the foodborne, though, getting to the outside. But E. coli is vital for human life, and we need it to take up residence, because when we have bacteria in our intestinal tract, it actually helps prevent the translocation of bacteria, because they each have their residence. This is why we have to feed our bacteria. It also creates a fighting chance against any invading bacteria. So, for example, you guys all remember, what is the bacteria that's on the outside of your body? It's like an invisible armor. You can't see it, but it's there to protect us. What is that?
The first line of defense? I don't know. I'm just thinking of physiology and micro. The first line of, it's not the first line of defense. It's I mean, it is first line of defense, but I don't know.
Do you remember what the bacteria is?
I mean, staph. You have a bunch of it. You have a bunch of different ones. It's mainly staph. You have staph on your hands and you have strep in your mouth.
It's in your scalp, the roots of your hair, folks. It's your skin, under your nails. It's all over the place. Staphylococcus aureus is your true first line of defense on your body. And it's incredibly powerful and healthy. But the conundrum is that if that translocates into our lumen or into our blood, like an open wound, we have a problem. So part of preventing infectious diseases actually starts with maintaining a healthy microflora for our body, both internally in our lumen and then externally on the outside of our body. So the world is full of absolutely wonderful and harmless bacteria. I don't know if you guys are aware of this, but I was doing a lot of reading on this, and there are microbes everywhere, right? I mean, the world is made of microbes. There's, when we have 100 trillion microbes in our intestinal tract alone, and we haven't even talked about on the outside of our skin, and there's 35 trillion blood cells, it's like, really? That's a 3-to-1 ratio. They may be little, but they're powerful. But they're starting to realize that, bacteria is what balances water. Bacteria is actually, they're starting to find, may be the foundation of attraction between species and when species decide to reproduce. So this kind of goes back to what I think I had opened in the nutrition section, is that there's a very strong possibility that when we have a good, healthy supply of bacteria, it is truly directing us, not just in our nutritional status and our health and well-being and our defense against things, but also influencing things like how we feel mentally, how we process information, who we're attracted to, and the actions we choose to take. So when an invading bacteria has the ability to take hold of our bodies, that turns everything upside down. That disrupts the whole order of the body. It disrupts the bacterial order that exists. That disrupts the cellular status of the body and how the body functions. It is a trickle down process that is like an atomic bomb. It evolves incredibly quickly. Crazy, huh? So should we be afraid of bacteria? When the vast majority of bacteria is harmless?
No, because when people are too afraid, then they're over sanitizing and they're disrupting their own bodies. And then because they're infected with these opportunistic pathogens, then they're now able to pass it on because they have an overabundance. And those bacteria are able to reproduce a whole bunch and be exposed to a bunch of things and become resistant. And it's just like this downward spiral of shit show.
Mm-hmm. Well said. So that's the key, you guys, is that when we start fixating on a small thing that is maybe a problem, maybe a not, and we blow it out of proportion and make it the problem, that causes us to disrupt the balance of everything else. Okay. So we do want to target the problems. And this goes back to the thing, like when parents, we've had this problem for years as to the foundation of where is it? Or antibiotic resistance, is that whenever children would get sick, the first thing parents would do is, it's like, I got to go to work. I can't have a sick kid at home. Doctor, come on, give them some antibiotics. I mean, antibiotics, when they hit the market in the 40s, were a miracle. They were a miracle for the volume of infections we have in war, for World War II. And they were a wonder drug when they hit the main public, to address things like children. I mean, you'd give them a little bit of penicillin and they would heal so quickly. But as we used it over and over and over again, we cannot forget that bacteria is dynamic and living. Humans evolved the slowest. Dinosaurs. Bacteria evolves not really that fast. It really is not that fast. But virus, on the other hand, evolves like that. It mutates instantly. It's a very quick process. So as we overused antibiotics for things that had nothing to do with bacteria, but actually had to do with virus, and antibiotics against the biome doesn't work on virus. Virus are not living. They don't have a structure. They don't have they're not living. They're really not. They're weird. They're almost like, you want to think of them as like, makes me think of Terminator.
They remind me of a end of the world, like robots.
Yeah, they're like automatons there to just reproduce and destroy. It's fascinating.
They're amazing.
But in terms of the antibiotics, the overexposure to antibiotics trained the bacteria in the world to mutate for survival, because we are all designed to survive. Human beings are designed to survive. That's why we procreate. Animals are designed to survive. That's why they procreate, not survive as individuals, survive as a species. Bacteria is designed to survive. Yet who else is designed to survive? Virus. Okay, so we won't get to virus next. So unfortunately, though, because bacteria is designed to survive and we kept pushing the envelope, like poking it with antibiotics, they started to gradually mutate and evolve and understand. And initially it started with the antibiotics that we needed, a tiny little sprinkling of fairy dust became more and more and more in volume. And it just wasn't cutting it. Oh my gosh, this sounds like when we do alcohol or drugs, a little bit once in a while, whoa. But the more often we repeat something, we become desensitized to it, which means we have to increase the volume to achieve the same effect. And as this evolved, as Jacqueline was pointing out, we ended up having mutating or evolving bacteria, and in some cases some virus, that we're running out of ideas of how to tackle these. Now they have, science is amazing and they've evolved, in how to harness the power of living bacteria and how to develop synthetic bacteria in the laboratory. And they've been able to come up with new types of antibiotics, but they've been kind of at a standstill lately of not having ideas. And in the interim, some of these simple, basic, common diseases have become so virulent, so powerful, that when people get them, it takes, I mean, I have a family friend who has been fighting with staph infections for years. They get it under control and then it explodes again. And it's just an ongoing battle. C. diff, this is one of the nightmares in the hospital environment, is because if that thing spreads in the hospital, you have the potential of losing patients like that. They can drop like flies. Your attention to TB. TB, for those of you who did microbiology, TB has a waxy outer wall, which makes it really resistant to breaking down and being destroyed in the environment. It can last longer in sunlight. Well, TB, this kind of goes back to the 1800s when they would have TB outbreaks, is that it was illegal to spit in areas where people would walk because of the possibility that you would step in the sputum and pick up the TB and then translocate it to other areas where you could come in contact with it. And it has the ability to float in the air. I think they should do a scary movie about that instead. So were these bacteria going to evolve on their own? Yes. But did we speed it up by pushing them constantly? Yes. So to some degree, we have created our own monster. Nice of him to share. Hopefully that's the police chasing him now. I'm kidding. Okay. So the bacteria, the few bacteria that are on this earth that are a challenge for human health, unfortunately, have split and created variants that are more powerful. And those are of concern, okay? Now, looking at virus is different. And this is why it was really important. I felt it was important for you guys to understand that, as bacteria is living, a virus is actually, it is designed to simply insert itself into into RNA, into the coding process for DNA, and disrupt that process and hijack it really to reproduce itself in someone else, a host's DNA, okay? So it's not designed to live on its own as its own entity, unlike bacteria is. Bacteria is out there and a part of this world. Where did virus come from? I do not know. It is one of the most fascinating things to contemplate. But virus has this weird ability to reproduce, and it was the only time in history we really had concerns is when we had the Spanish influenza received a lot of attention because you had soldiers crossing from different continents and you had the transfer of this virus to different places. I mean, think about it. In ancient times when human beings, when the Vikings crossed the ocean, that was a slow, long journey. Well, when influenza takes 4 days to really kind of culminate and come to be, and then it takes, up to a couple weeks to clear through a person's system, you've crossed the ocean by then. If it were that deadly, you'd be dead and overboard in the ocean as fish fodder. No big deal. You're not going to infect other people. But when we started speeding up and increasing the transfer between different locations, we had that ability to bring diseases. And some of them last longer or are latent, and some are shorter. So for example, thinking about the bacterial infections we brought to America from Europe, the childhood diseases that really wiped out a lot of our indigenous populations in North America. crazy and unfortunate. Um, okay, so I got off on a little bit of a tangent. Hi. So in terms of virus, oh yeah, that's where I was. Hey, okay. So in terms of virus has been around forever. You know, the next, you know, I think big explosion was probably to take into consideration was polio, and then HIV. And I will tell you that living through HIV in the, what was that, the late 80s, that was crazy. I mean, that was just, you know, the media gave it some attention. There wasn't the I don't know what's going on out there. I mean, I don't know what's going on. The hysteria in our society is like nothing I've ever seen. When AIDS hit, nobody understood what was going on initially or what was going on. And unfortunately, it was in a very specific community. So it took time to get out in the public, and we didn't know what we were dealing with. And when they finally started to figure it out and the communication was out there that it basically is transference through bodily fluids, there was some minimal hysteria where people would be like, don't touch me, you're going to give me AIDS. I mean, really, come on. So it took education. But what is going on today? What is going on today that influenza that's been around forever with human beings, that we have dealt with it always. What is going on today that really there is a level of hysteria? I need you guys to tell me what you see and what you think.
About the flu?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, shit. Aging population being more susceptible to dying because of it, or dying from complications from it because of their the comorbidities.
Yeah, because influenza, you guys, by nature, targets the lungs, okay? And when it targets the lungs, especially people who have lung-based diseases like asthma or COPD, they're already at a limited lung capacity. And when you introduce an infection into the lungs, that is just going to cause that disease to honestly to suffocate the person to death, which is interesting because that was the trademark of the Spanish influenza. People turned blue from lack of oxygen, not being able to breathe. And that one, I think, if I remember correctly, I think they said that one, your lungs will fill up with pus. Ew, I don't know what that was about. But okay, so that it targets older people. So you've got people with asthma, you've got people with COPD, you've got people with compromised immune systems, right? And that's, you know, at the point where we're at in society, especially American society, we have a large volume of baby boomers. Thank you. Okay, fabulous. So we're kind of top heavy in the age range. But I'm going to pose one question which baffles me. And I have been trying to wrap my head around this and I can't figure it out. I look at a country like Italy that had an incredibly high death rate of seniors that they reported, right? And then I look at the United States and I look at New York, and there's a lot of complications with that death rate because a lot of the people were reintegrated into their senior healthcare settings who were infected and reinfected people or infected people. That was a weird scenario. And if you're not familiar with it, then you can look it up. But what state, of all the states in the United States, where do you guys think a lot of seniors live?
Florida.
Florida and
California.
Arizona. Okay. They refer to Arizona as the snowbird state, right? Because people, Canada and the United States tend to migrate down there. It's cute because my sister-in-law tells me the culture is fascinating. She said they fly in, they hang out down there in their RVs, they live down there during the winter months, they collect things, and then they go to the Goodwill and dump off all of their stuff and then drive back home. And I mean, oh my God, you guys, we all should be shopping in Arizona. she's
Okay.
like buying things that will be a few $100, and she'll go into the Goodwill and they'll cost $1 and sometimes never have been used. And I'm like, dang, some good deals over there. But okay, so we've got two states, Arizona and Florida. Have you guys paid attention to the death rates of seniors in those two states?
Not lately.
They're low. Why?
Is it because it's adjusted for the young people, or like because it's hot? Or,
Too hot? I wish I could say that would be the scenario, but uh, yes, by nature, oh, that's a garbage truck. What day is today? Tuesday. Okay. Um, by nature, you guys, flu season slowly starts in the fall. It tends to really start to pick up in January and peak usually at around March. Okay, the true depths of the winter season. And then it slowly typically recedes in the spring, and usually by the summer it's like very, very few cases. All right. And usually in a cycle of a virus, it will go through that cycle and it'll just kind of die off. And that's why whenever we traditionally get flu shots, we do not know which one is going to be the one who's popular, you might say, that's going to come around. This is the payoff of doing like a trivalent shot, is when you're going to do three different possible strains. But we really don't know. We cannot predict what's going to come. But we can respond as quick as we can to that scenario. And I got to say, that's one of the awesome things about this whole pandemic thing, is the education to wash your hands and not touch your what?
face.
Eyes,
No.
nose, and open wounds. I'm not as worried about influenza getting to your stomach, because that hydrochloric acid, it'll kill everything. Unless, of course, you eat like a sandwich that's just totally loaded with Staphylococcus aureus because someone's hair follicle is in there, then you have a problem. So I don't know. These are things, this is critical thinking, you guys, is really, I encourage you to ponder and listen and think as to why is it these two states that have very high concentration of seniors and a lot of transiency, because these people typically travel back and forth between states, why are they not having super high incidences of influenza? I don't have that answer. In the case of the Spanish influenza, interestingly enough, seniors were the ones not getting the flu. It was actually targeting young adults who got knocked out. So they think that the reason the seniors were not developing it back then was because they had already been exposed to it earlier in their lives. And so their body had an immune response. It knew what to do. Is it possible that this variant has been around before, or parts of this has been around before, and these seniors in these regions have exposure and knew how to respond to it? Is it what Jacqueline's saying, that maybe the hot weather is a deterrent for influenza, that they would have lower rates in those areas? I don't know, this is kind of the hard thing, but this is part of us needing to learn more about bacteria and virus. Is, these are things we can't see. So it's not like we can say, oh yeah, there it is. But we need to be on this journey to logically, all right, critically think about. Logic and analysis, folks, produces critical thinking. Is what is going on that influences human health. What makes a virus more powerful? Well, when we talk about optimal health, what scenario would make a virus more powerful? Jennifer, you tell me, what scenario in human health would a person make their viral exposure more significant, more powerful to take over their body?
Would it be like being around lots of different people, being exposed?
Okay, the possibility of higher exposure. All right. But I want you to start with the individual self.
Hmm.
If you had no exposure to people and I were to come into a room and expose you intentionally to influenza, what would give you the most powerful fighting chance versus make you most susceptible?
Hmm. Well,
And I will tell you the correlation, folks. It's the same with animals and it's the same with humans. Sorry, plants. Plants, humans, and animals. We all share things in common.
like eating, like food or something.
Okay, yeah. Start with you guys. Everything in life gets back to the basics. Absolutely, Jennifer. So, first of all, nutrition. Okay, good quality soil for plants, water for plants, sunlight for plants makes a hardy, stronger plant to withstand disease and infestation by insects. Okay, for animals, animals that have good nutrition, have self care, no open wounds, they're healthier, they're stronger, greater survival. For human beings, the same thing. Good nutrition, exercise. Okay, so you've got nutrition and water, same for plants, animals, and humans. Nutrition and water, sunlight, because for plants and animals and humans, we produce nutrients through sunlight. What is the nutrient human beings produce with sunlight?
Vitamin D.
Vitamin D, absolutely. Okay. Now, plants have a rest period that's called nighttime, right? Animals have a rest time. It's called constant napping. Darn things. All right. And humans sleep. All right. Now, so plants, do they have exercise? I don't know. They creep, they grow, they crawl. I guess that's their version of exercise. You got me. There's so much about them we don't know. Animals do need exercise. That's part of their health and well-being because it's the nutrient delivery system through the body, just like us, right? So sleep, exercise, nutrition. But for humans, we're more complicated because we have self-induced stress. If you put stress on an animal, it does have a degree of mental health issue. Have any of you ever had an animal that is skittish, that is aggressive, that is reclusive? Have you ever had two plants? One thrives and one doesn't? There's a lot more layers to life than we understand. But what we're doing is exploring a lot about human life, and that mental health, that emotional aspect is powerful as a part of our well-being. So when we have those lined up, we actually have a fortified body, which means a fortified immune response. We can respond more quickly to exposure to bacteria and virus, more powerfully. And if we get sick, we can rebound more quickly. So I always think about this is that why is it at schools, teachers always get sick? I'm talking about with little kids, because little children are constantly, they're leaving a trail everywhere. And because parents tend to dump their sick children on the school system because it's their version of daycare. Okay. It's a burden for parents to have to take time off from work to care for children. That's how our society has constructed it. So children become the vector, the delivery of disease in schools to each other and to the adults teaching. But why is it some teachers in the same school rarely get sick and others are sick all the time? I mean, is there to some degree a genetic component because of an immune compromised disease? Of course. But it really boils down to those tenets of health: the good nutrition, the exercise, the stress management, the mental health, the sleep. Okay. So there's that other layer of defense, folks. You know, are things like immunizations important? Yes. But you always got to start with the health of the individual first, the building materials, the foundation. Now, immunizations are amazing, and that's that part of the herd immunity, that if the majority of people are immunized, then the minority will be protected by the majority and will have less transference. But ever since that one crazy made up study from the guy who said that, I can't remember if it had to do with the thimerosal or what in shots, but he had said that immunizations promote autism.
The MMR vaccine causes autism in a case study of 13 kids who had genetic predispositions.
Yeah, 13 kids. This is why evidence-based science is so important, folks, is we have to have a volume of studies and large quantities of population to identify really what's going on. I think the irony is that even after they stopped that process, why did some people still develop autism? There's more at play in human life. And unfortunately, what some people are hinting at, but no one is really saying, is if your DNA is methylated by your dietary choices and your DNA is the building material of the fetus, I think a lot of people don't want to acknowledge that it might go back to the choices of the parents.
Accountability?
Huh?
Accountability? No.
Yeah. And I don't think any parent wants to ever hear that. I mean, I don't think we do. I mean, because honestly, there's nothing on this planet Earth is that we wouldn't want anything bad to happen when we deliver a baby. We want them to have the best possible life. And I don't fault anyone, because this really has to do with education. And we have a paucity, a severe shortage of education in this country on the basic fundamentals of self-care. Bummer. So immunizations are amazing. I mean, to think about the rate of polio until they developed the shot is just crazy. All right. The possibility of being able to go to countries where you have diseases like yellow fever or smallpox, and being able to go to those countries and not develop these diseases and come home safely and alive. Absolutely fabulous. Okay. So I don't think there's an issue of immunizations as being bad. But I think what's more important is that we really need to start, before we run around screaming, give me shots, is what are we doing for our self-care? And this is going to be at the crux of it, my friends, is that be cautious when we embrace the idea of being immunized. Okay. Immunizations are wonderful and amazing, but they are not magic bullets. Can you be immunized for chickenpox and still develop chickenpox? Yes or no?
You get shingles, don't you?
Yeah.
And depending if you don't get a booster or not. I had chickenpox as a kid, so I didn't get the actual vaccine.
Oh, interesting. See, Jacqueline, I had chickenpox as a kid, and when I went into the healthcare industry, I had to get the shot.
Oh.
Had to. And then to this day, I am convinced I've already had my first round of shingles.
So that's the other thing I've heard, is that adults are like more prone to getting shingles because they got the shot.
And interestingly enough, I will say that of the few people I've known to get shingles, can you guys guess what the common denominator was?
Yeah.
Stress and bad nutrition. And I don't, bad meaning lack of nutrition. Crazy. So our first line of defense, even when we have immunization, is still our self-care. So when we look at things like the influenza shot, it's Russian roulette, because the question is, when I get my flu shot every year, what influenza am I going to be exposed to? Will the shot cover that or will it not? Okay. That's a false sense of safety that we need to be really wise about. Now, the true sense of safety is, how am I caring for myself with the added bonus of an inoculation? Okay. It may not, think of it this way, is if I fortify myself with good nutrition, exercise, sleep, mental health, and emotional health management, right? Yeah. If I fortify myself, then think of the flu shot as being like a water gun. You are ready to go when there's a fire. But what if it's not a fire? What if it's an earthquake or a windstorm? Then the flu shot doesn't work, but you still have your strength and your well-being. Okay. I'm worried because I hear a lot of people say, I got my flu shot. I just talking to my mother, who is crazyville. And she's like, oh, I'm having all these friends over because we've all had the flu shot. You're in your 70s, my friends. I don't have a problem with people getting together, but my mother is an alcoholic. She's a potentially walking petri dish. So, what is the takeaway point? Do you guys get that? Y'all with me on this? The promotion of optimal health is truly, you want to optimize your health and prevention of diseases, you got to start with the tenets, the foundation of your health. And then when you have things like immunizations, which are absolutely fantastic, they are the boosters to your health, but they're not your health. Okay. That's the important takeaway. Oh yeah. And Jacqueline, in response, by the way, about antibiotic resistance and nutrition, I was actually on the USDA's website, and they actually have been, it's a slow process, but they have been actively working with veterinarians to slowly remove the human antibiotics from the food supply chain and focus more on antibiotics that are appropriate only for animals.
Nice.
So there has been enough squawk in society. Thank you, grassroots initiative of people making a stand. That they have been working on a change. Now there's other things still at play, which concerns me equally, which is growth hormones, using growth hormones in animals, which can transfer to humans. And that's a lot of data that we still don't have yet. And I'm not sure if anyone's paying even for those studies. But if you are what you eat, then if the chicken eats the worm, you're eating the worm. Get over it, right? If the chicken's eating the wheat grain, so are you. So are you really gluten intolerant?
Yeah.
But if the chicken is being fed hormones to grow bigger, what is it doing to you?
Yeah. My other concern is like the mass exposure to the animals, because then they're just going to create, like, that's, I'm worried about them like giving it to all of them, like all the time, and like exposing it and just creating super bugs in the animals, because then like round two.
Right? I should have learned my lesson and closed the window in the first place. Strange how quickly they came and went too, considering I'm in a neighborhood. That's a really great point in terms of, the idea, and this is where it has been abused, is that part of it goes back to how mass production of animals is keeping them in very closed, tight quarters, which means, of course, disease passes among them. It's respiratory diseases, you guys. Respiratory diseases are what's being transferred between animals, and that's why they're using the antibiotics to tackle the respiratory diseases, because obviously as anyone breathes, the animals breathe, it transfers from one to the other to the other. And so the practice has been to inoculate the whole herd, the whole gaggle of creatures with antibiotics to prevent it from transferring. But by constantly giving people animals antibiotics over and over again, even when they don't have a problem with that bacteria, The bacteria is smart, and it's basically going to say, screw you. You're going to keep pushing me, then I'm going to evolve above and beyond this. And this is where some of those, when they were using the human antibiotics, it transferred over to human health and became a problem for us. Crazy. So some of our actions are causing life to outpace us. But again, get back to the basics. It starts with how we manage ourselves and our self-care. Okay, do you guys have any thoughts or comments about infectious diseases?
I have a question about immunizations, because you're talking about like your shot can be your booster to like your good nutrition, good sleep. But I've noticed that, so when my boyfriend and I got vaccinated for COVID, we had like, we were like tired, sore arm, whatever. But my other friends who got it didn't eat beforehand, and they felt 10 times worse. That does play a role in it, right? Like you should, like make sure you're feeling well, because I know some people who've gone to get it and they're like, I feel terrible. I'm like, you haven't eaten in like a day. Like, what do you expect? Like,
Okay.
this is one of those things I want to like throw out there to anyone who hasn't gotten the vaccine, so they know.
So basically, you're sharing insight for anyone who has not had the shot, that practice self-care before you go get the shot.
I mean, any shot, like they do advise you to like eat beforehand.
Yeah, and it's a really good point. I mean, it depends, first of all, on let's see, the Johnson & Johnson was the vector one. And it seems to me the COVID one is not live attenuated, right? Because it's the mRNA, it's the RNA.
Pfizer and Moderna are mRNA. So your body is actually coding for a spike. So your body's working to code a spike. It's releasing the spike, and then your body's working to provide an immune response.
Okay, and you guys, when your body develops an immune response, what does it need to do that? Nutrition, the building materials. You've got to have the foundation. And the way the body is designed, we are designed for survival, which means it does upset the balance when your body has to, if it doesn't get the nutrients it needs, it starts breaking down other aspects of the body, and it can't have as quick and effective a response. So interestingly, if you do not have good self-care and nutrition before you get the shot, you actually make yourself highly susceptible. And I don't mean highly susceptible to the shot. I mean highly susceptible to everyone in the room around you or anywhere else, including the fomites, the things that you touch. Not so much my banana, but the things that are out there. So yes, if you're going to get the shot, practice self-care first.
Thank you for my soapbox.
I got lots of soapboxes if you guys ever want to borrow any.
I'm only 5'2". I could use the height.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So that is a little bit, there were glimmers of information, folks, in that conversation that could be applied to your assignment this week. All right. Thursday's discussion on foodborne pathogens will also be glimmers of information that will be applicable to your assignment. All right. Any other thoughts, questions, or statements? No? Y'all good? Okay. Then you guys are absolutely fabulous, amazing, and excellent. And I really appreciate you guys joining me. I really thank you. One of my classes, the people have completely disappeared. I come to class and I'm like,
that's awkward.
Yeah, it really is. So I really do appreciate when you guys make time in your schedules to join me and do this live. And I know that it just is dependent on all of our schedules, and some of us have to work. And then at that point, I admire you for making the time to watch this video, because now you just know I said that. Oh my gosh.
You're great.
I know, I'm so self-amused, it's disgusting.